Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Excited to have you on.
This is the problem we run into is we always do the best pre-podcast. We could have just recorded that whole thing. It would have been incredibly competent.
Let's run it back.
Yeah, but we were saying we're huge fans of the work that you guys are doing at Hopdoddy. Burgers are delicious. You guys are super intentional about the ingredients. And we first had the opportunity to hear you speak at the Force of Nature, What Good Shall I Do? Because I think you had just started sourcing bison patties for them for that Buffalo Bill burger that you guys are doing. So it's just cool to come across restaurants that are really doing things the right way. And now you guys have a great story. So we'd love to just learn a little bit more about you and just have an awesome conversation.
Yeah, man. Sounds awesome. That Force of Nature conference was amazing.
It was awesome.
I think Taylor and Katie at Rome Ranch and Robbie and their whole team, they're doing some of the best work at anybody that I've ever come across the entire time I've been in the restaurant industry. I think both from a cultural standpoint, from a mission standpoint, and from a product standpoint, the end result standpoint, I think they're world class.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm so impressed with. You're still going in?
Yeah,
I'm talking. Yeah.
Okay.
No answer.
No worries. I was just going to say, one of the things I'm most impressed with them is, like, it's so clear that their mission just is their North Star. Like, they sold for a great amount of money with their Epic Provisions concept, and they just rolled it into the next two things, Rome Ranch and Force of Nature. And it just, like, goes to show, like, they're so in it for the long haul and just trying to, like, move this whole regenerative, improving the food quality ethos forward. And I think there's, like, so much power to that. We've learned so much from them just sharing that whole mission. So it's really incredible.
I'm still kind of trying to learn, honestly, from them. I'm far from an expert. I know you guys had Robbie on, and he's amazing. And his knowledge and Taylor and Katie's knowledge, they're on a different level than what I could speak on. But one of the things I think is so cool about them, what really drew me to their product from a storytelling perspective, because obviously what we do in the restaurant industry, we have to serve great product. We have to cook it really well. But we also have to tell a story to people. They have to be able to understand it, and they have to be able to understand why it is that we selected that product. And the curation of our food and our products has to be really intentional. And I think what I think is really cool about what they do is they're really focused on land stewardship, really focused on soil and biology health, the land their animals, are kind of grazing on. And I think because they kind of start with the end in mind, they start there, and then everything builds from that. And so it's a really cool way to revolutionize an industry. And they're not only trendsetters, but they're way out in front of everybody else and the stuff that they're doing and the way that they evaluate ranches or land stewards and things that they do. I think it's just world class.
Yeah. How'd you come across them?
It's kind of a funny story. My wife's a big hunter, and when she first moved to Texas, she saw an axis deer, kind of like the one that we were just talking about. And she really wanted to hunt axis deer. And her old company had done a retreat at Rome, and they went out there, planted some trees, and kind of did some team building stuff at Rome with Taylor and Katie. I think the owners were friends with them. And we were looking for a place to go get on an axis hunt. And like I was telling you guys, remember the show, Texas is really interesting. Interesting is a kind word, but Texas is different in the hunting environment because, I think something like 98% of the land is private. So when you want to go find an axis hunt, you can't just hop on public land like you can in Wyoming or Montana or Idaho. So you have to find some way that, I know some land with regenerative access. And she had said to me, she said, "Hey, I think Rome sells axis hunts and they have a herd of axis out there." So I reached out to Taylor and Katie and booked an axis hunt. Never met them, didn't know anything about it, showed up. And this is kind of funny, but before the hunt, they said, "Gosh, we have this one guide, but he's not able to come. We're going to put you with a different guide, and you guys have a great hunt." So, all right, whatever. Hop in the gator, kind of go out. We're sitting in blind, the three of us, my wife, myself, my wife, and their guide. We're sitting there, we're kind of waiting for something to happen. And in hunting blinds in Texas, when you're just kind of hanging out, people are kind of chatting, and someone's on their phone, kind of jerking around or whatever. And the guy's like, "So what do you do?" And I start telling him, I work for Hopdoddy. He's like, "Oh, I know the brand." He's like, "God, do you guys sell bison?" And I was like, "Yeah, we do." And he's like, you should really talk to Taylor and Katie. They're herd of bison. And I was like, I kind of brushed it off. I was like, and to him, I was like, "Yeah, man, you guys probably don't have enough bison for us. Like, we sell a lot of bison. And I'm pretty sure in the blind, the guy texted Marshall, who's consequently turned into one of my closest friends.
Marshall Seedorf.
Yep.
Yeah. Great dude.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So he texted Marshall, and 2 days later, as we're pulling out of camp, Marshall's standing at scout camp, his cowboy hat on, big Force of Nature vest and cowboy boots. I'm like, I kind of like this guy already. And we start talking to Taylor and Katie and Marshall and I and my wife. We're standing around the back of a pickup truck. He's like, so how many pounds of bison you guys go through? And I was telling him, I was like, listen, man, do you guys have supply? And he's like, yeah, we can take care of you. And I was like, man, I probably can't afford what you guys are selling. And he's like, well, we should talk. And I was like, okay, well, and those guys move quick. And I think this was pretty early on for them relatively early on. And, one thing led to another. We started talking, kind of understood a little bit more about the company and people behind it. And, the CEO of Hopdoddy is, one of my mentors and my closest friends. And, he has this saying that we can buy food from anybody. We just don't work with jerks. We don't work with assholes. We want to buy stuff from people that we really like, because we can buy stuff from anybody. So I ended up meeting these guys and went on a duck hunt, and we're hanging out, and we ended up kind of breaking bread and having a great time, and the rest is history.
That's so awesome. And then the way that I understand it is your role at Hopdoddy, you're really curating and putting the menu together, right? What you guys are selling and serving.
Yeah.
So is it as easy as, okay, I like this company, let's just start using their bison? Or is it really particular of like breaking down the economics, making sure it makes sense for you guys from a price standpoint?
All of that.
Awesome. Yeah.
So my role at Hopdoddy is I oversee the entire menu, all food and beverage. So drinks, every individual item, all the burgers, all the kind of the different builds and kind of creations. I'm responsible for all that. And then I'm responsible for overseeing our marketing department as well. So I kind of control the messaging, the branding, and kind of our positioning in the space. And so, everything you said though, like when we're evaluating it, look at how many pounds we're moving, what the price is, price per ounce, what our ounce on the plate cost is, what the price is to get it in our back door, plus vendor markup, plus the case fees, and then, break it down. And is it hand battied? Is it coming in batty? What's the fat to lean ratio? What's it going to render down to once we cook it? What are we going to put on it? What's the blended cost with, our bun and our cheese and all the rest of that stuff? And then how does that work? When I take our old volume plus our volume at our old price, with our new price, what's that delta going to be? Is that something we can live with? If it's more, is it something that we think we can sell to people? They'll understand the difference. Do I want to take price up a little bit to kind of make up for that price delta? Do I want to pass all that cost through, or do I want to give more value to the customer? Do I want to say, hey, you were paying $10 for XYZ bison, but you're still going to pay $10 and it's going to be regenerative bison and tell you the story behind it. So,
yeah, I have to imagine that's probably one of the trickiest dances as a restaurateur, is wanting to put out the best possible product, the best ingredients, but it's also a business too. So there's margins and there's all these behind the scenes costs that go into it, right?
Yeah. And you kind of blend that with what can you sell it for, and then how do you make money? Because obviously, like, it's great to serve. I'd love to serve, a bunch of stuff that I'm probably not. But then I have to ask myself, is the guest, is the customer going to see the value in that? Are they going to pay for it? And, how will I stay in business doing that? Like, for an example, would have been, I could have taken the bison burger up to $15, covered my cost, and everything would have been great. How many people are going to line up out the door at South Congress to pay for a $15 cheeseburger?
Right. Yeah.
When Shake Shack, In-N-Out, everybody else are selling it for $4, $5, $6. I got to ask myself questions. So there's this dance between what can the market sustain? How can I provide value on the plate? And then how much do I think what I'm putting on the plate is going to resonate with the guest?
How do you guys go about thinking about telling those stories? Like, is it as simple as partnering with someone like Rome Ranch, who also has a marketing department and is telling these stories? Or do you guys really put more thought into, like, just the overall message that Hopdoddy is trying to put out there?
So we partner with Force of Nature.
Yeah.
Royal Ranch is...
Force of Nature.
Not that Royal Ranch isn't great. I just want to make sure I'm plugging this right. It becomes challenging. We look at it in kind of from an omni-channel approach. Like, what can we put on our website where we're going to drive some traffic? What can we put that's, a POP sign, like point of purchase? How do we kind of inform the guest at the point of purchase? What can we tell on our social media? What goes out in kind of our mailers? And then kind of as far as just conventional advertising, like what can we kind of put out there in the community to really tell that story? And then we ask a lot of times that our partners do the same thing. So, Force of Nature does a great job of marketing us and marketing their product kind of in conjunction, and works well.
Nice. Prior to meeting the Force of Nature team, were you thinking something regenerative meat-wise on the menu? Because I know you're obviously a huge hunter, so I'm just curious if you were thinking about that before them.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I wasn't, and I hadn't heard of regenerative until I kind of got linked up with them. I was probably one of those people, like many people, that thought, a bunch of the other buzzwords were like for
Right.
pasture raised, and grass fed, free range, organic, and sustainable, and local. And you can't throw a regenerative on top of it, and just like that trumps everything.
Let's take a minute to talk about some of the sponsors and brands who support the show.
What are you thinking?
I was thinking about Carnivore Bar. What are your thoughts on Carnivore Bar?
I mean, it's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable product. We were lucky enough to have the founder, Philip Meese, on the show a few months ago, and he was able to send us a bunch of product when we started the relationship and absolutely loved it. I mean, it's minimum ingredient product, beef, tallow, salt, and then they do have a honey flavored option as well, but it's so nice to have a bar that's like 3 to 4 ingredients. And like when you're following a carnivore diet, it's really tough to find products that are in line with that specific diet,
Yeah, for me, it kind of hits like the holy trinity of what you're looking for when you're looking for food. So it's nutrient dense, it's convenient, and it tastes great. And as you said, most people who are trying to eat healthy, the convenience factor is kind of a tough part. So just being able to have something you can grab on the go, know that you're going to have that nutrition for the day, it's huge.
Yeah, and we were lucky enough, we got to actually see their factory too in Missouri, and they're just doing things the right way. I love how they offer an option for like carnivore purists where it's just beef, tallow, salt. And then they also have an animal-based option too. If you do want a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of variety, they have the honey in that option. And they're just people that are doing things the right way. They're very mission focused. They're carnivores themselves. And, we're always on the go. We're traveling. We've taken a bunch of flights together. To have a bar that has 30 grams of fat too, like that's huge from an energy density standpoint, right?
Yeah, he checks all the boxes, or the company checks all the boxes. And I just think the fact that they're sourcing from a regenerative farm as well, and Joyce Farms, just a win-win.
100%. So Carnivore Bar. So we got the affiliate link, and then it's code MAFIA for 10% off.
And then another one of our sponsors, one of our favorite farms, Holy Cow. What they're doing at Holy Cow is pretty remarkable. The relationships that they've built in the industry and how long they've been doing the grass-fed, grass-finished regenerative model is really innovative. They were one of the first people to be doing that and supplying whole foods early on. Just a great community farm, and also just the product is something that speaks for itself.
Yeah, I think number one, to your point, Harry, they're just incredible people. We got to hear them speak at the Beef Initiative conference in Colorado. We had never met them before, but just hearing Warren's story where they were following a standard American diet, he had a heart attack, and they were just looking for answers of like, how can we actually get healthier? Do I need to be dependent on medication? And they started changing their diets to incorporating more animal foods, and he completely reversed those symptoms of his stroke. And now they're just doing things the right way. They're grass finishing their beef. They're incorporating incredible practices. They have great relationships with the animals, and they're very passionate about just like connecting directly with the customer and also educating their customer on grass finished beef.
Yeah, and I think the best part is too, they're shipping nationally and trying to reach a bigger audience. So being able to not only supply beef nationally, but also educate people on the quality of good, clean, whole foods is just, it's an incredible mission.
How much do you love their beef bacon, by the way? I know that's your go-to.
Dude, it's one of the best things I've ever tasted.
It's that good.
No, honest to God, it's so good.
Holy cow.
Yeah. One of the other farms that supports us is Perennial Pastures, another regenerative farm out of San Diego. Our experience with Kevin Munoz, the owner, we had him on the show, a young first-generation rancher who's really empowered by this movement of regenerative agriculture and really wants to be a leader in the space. I think our conversation with him was so insightful just in terms of how mission focused he is and how he really thinks about his farm as a business and wanting it to be here 50, 100 years down the road, even though he's just the first generation of it. And I think just being able to spend time with him out in San Diego was kind of the perfect indication of that, where we got to go have a meal with him at his house, hang out with his wife and kids. Like, what an amazing person. And I think his mission focus around raising really high quality beef and restoring nutrients to the soil is just one of those rare missions that I think everyone can get around.
Yeah, he has such a commitment to really feeding the local community in San Diego, in the San Diego County, first and foremost. But he's also passionate about feeding the community around the country. So I know they've invested a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources to being able to order beef in bulk on their website. So I know that they now offer quarter, half, whole cows directly off the website. They have that great ancestral blend ground beef product. So it actually has organ grinds mixed into the ground beef. So you're getting the benefits of like an ounce or so of organ meat, but because it's in the ground beef, you really can't taste it at all. And I think to your point, Harry, just another amazing person. Kev was someone that he was following a paleo diet in college and started realizing, wow, when I nourish my body with real foods, I feel amazing. Had a really successful stint in tech, but realized that there was just something else that he was passionate about. So he's one of those rare cases where, he put his money where his mouth is, and he's a first generation farmer, just, bootstrapping this thing, raising money, and just so passionate about feeding the community. Just an amazing guy.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your thoughts on organ supplements, and what do you think about the company that supports our podcast, Optimal Carnivore?
Such a good question, man. I think organ meat is something that's gained a ton of notoriety the last few years, and for good reason. I don't want to speak for you, but I think both of us have had a ton of benefits just incorporating organ meats into our diet. I would say that, we definitely prefer the raw source of organs, where we'll just, chop up some liver and some heart, and, there are different ways to prepare it. I think the raw source is the most nutrient dense, but we're fortunate that there are companies like Optimal Carnivore that exist that freeze dry organ capsules, so you can actually take them on the go. There are a ton of times where we're traveling where we're not going to have access to raw organs. So I can throw a little Ziploc bag together of Optimal Carnivore and be good to go. And I think 6 pills is an ounce of organs, which is like the daily recommended amount that will give you a lot of those really good quality vitamins in there. So that's kind of how I think we've been using it. Did I miss anything there?
No, I think the fact that it just makes organs accessible to people. And I think that organs are generally just a food group that are underutilized when it comes to eating nose to tail. And the nature's vitamin is a perfect name for these organ foods. And I think a lot of people are pretty, in the mainstream, object to eating organ meats. But when you put it in a pill form that doesn't taste bad, it's convenient, you can put it in your backpack. It makes things a lot easier. And I also think that just generally these brands Optimal Carnivore is focused on making people healthier, which is just such a strong mission. And, I think liver capsules is a great way to get people thinking about their health differently.
100%. There's probably someone that's listening to this right now, and you're interested in organ meats, but the taste might make you a bit squeamish. You feel strange about eating raw foods. Maybe you cook liver and you don't like it. Maybe it has a metallic taste. I think that's also where the organ capsules play such a great role, is that you're still getting that nutrient density, but you're getting it in a very convenient capsule-like format, and it just takes away any of that squeamishness that you might have to the taste. It's just a great product. And also Richard, who runs Optimal Carnivore, he's started listening to the show really early on, and he's built his own organ supply chain and is just doing things the right way and really trying to support the right people in the space. So just proud to be associated with them, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for listening. Now we're going to go back to the show.
Interesting. Yeah. I think that I first heard about you guys, I think around 2019, when I first went carnivore January 2019. And it was similar to you. I know that you listened to Baker's podcast on Rogan, and that's what first got you interested. I listened to that too. And then I'd seen Bigger, Stronger, Faster when I was younger. And then I followed Chris Bell on Instagram and noticed that he lost a shitload of weight in 2018 going carnivore. And I started noticing that him and his brother, and then Sean too, they were posting themselves just crushing burger patties at Hopdoddy. Yeah. And you guys they were even hosting some carnivore meetups there. So it always seems like you guys were health conscious. I don't know if you were behind the scenes with that, but that was how I first came across you guys a few years ago.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bigger, Stronger, Faster. Chris is one of my dear friends. Mark's amazing as well. It's kind of funny, actually. I'm really good friends with Chris, and my little brother is really good friends with Mark. And we all kind of met together, but like Mark and Milo, so it's like a big brother, little brother thing.
Yeah.
They're amazing. Sean is as well. I was kind of telling you guys we were walking. Sean's a good friend. And the carnivore kind of movement was great for me. It was cool to capture. Like, obviously, you have guests like you guys from that whole thing. But as far as being health conscious at our restaurant, it's obviously something that plays into decision making. But I also do have to step back a lot of times and be like, well, I am serving burgers. We're serving burgers, shakes, and fries.
Yeah.
So from a caloric standpoint, it's really challenging to kind of meet everybody's needs in that regard. But we just, what I aspire to nutritionally with kind of Hopdoddy positioning is, if you're going to have a meal with us, I just want to make it as accessible as possible for everybody. So what we talk about all the time is no veto vote. So if the four of us are going to go out, you guys are carnivores, maybe I don't eat meat, maybe he's an omnivore. I don't want anybody to be like, well, we can't go to Hopdoddy.
Right.
I want there to be something for everybody. So we have a veggie patty that we make in house. We have obviously a variety of different proteins, but we're always, like right now, I'm always trying to figure out different ways to kind of play into that, better for you, whether it's keto, whether it's low carb, whether it's grain free. So, we've recently kind of launched like our burger bowl series. So you can go into Hopdoddy, you can get any one of our burgers. You can just say, make it a bowl for me. It'll come on a bed of dressed greens with kale and lettuce and all that stuff. And all the toppings go in the bowl, and whatever's on top of the burger just gets set on top. And that's really cool.
Yeah.
We just launched fried Brussels sprouts. So you can do the same thing with Brussels sprouts on top. And that seems to resonate with people.
Nice. What's the most popular thing on the menu?
Man, I'd love to tell you it was something that it's not, but it's a classic.
Just the classic.
Classic cheeseburger, man.
Yeah. Well, I think the cool thing about you guys too is it's like, if you want to go in, say we're following the carnivore diet, you can go in there and stick to a carnivore diet, burger patties, cheese. But then if you want to do something hearty and celebrate a little bit, you can get some fries, a shake, a full burger too. So you do have that optionality for people.
Get a beer, get a margarita, get a full bar, can do whatever you want.
That's one of the things that I actually found interesting about Hopdoddy is, like, every time I go in there, it seems like it's kind of bumping. Like, it's like a hybrid between a bar and a burger shop. Is that something that's intentional?
100%. It's our name. So we're Hopdoddy Burger Bar.
Yeah.
We think that's what really kind of separates us from everybody else, is like we have a full bar.
Yeah.
We want it to feel like that. We want it to feel, we say it's a difference between grungy and grimy.
Yeah.
We want to kind of play in that little space there. We want it to feel homey. We want it to feel kind of worn, but worn right. Kind of almost patinaed. We want our restaurants to feel patinaed and feel comfortable and feel energetic, warm, inviting. We want our service to be that way. We want our food to be restorative and wholesome and nutritious, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, we just want you to be able to kind of let your hair down, come in and grab a burger, get some good food, hang out with some good people, with some good music, and have the opportunity to have good beer or something like that.
How do you see your past restaurant experience helping you today with what you're doing with Hopdoddy?
Yeah, that's a good question. In my past, I did a lot of like fine dining, high touch, really highly composed plates. I think the one thing that I would say that I bring out of Hopdoddy by background is stuff that I used to use, like tweezers, spoon pushes, and quenelles, all this stuff on like a really fine dining plate. I just kind of try to take that same energy and just put it on burger, like put it on bun. So I'm always trying to kind of think of like, what's a really classic like pairing that you would see in a fine dining restaurant? How do I distill that down, make it a little bit more approachable, and then like put it on a burger?
Yeah. And so you've been the culinary director there for 6 years. And I have to think that has to be a dream role for you, especially you said you had owned and operated a ton of restaurants at a young age. So it's like you have all the benefits of like the creativity, the restaurant creation, but none of the overhead and the stress of being a restaurant owner, I would imagine.
100%. That's why I moved to Texas, was for this job. I was really passionate about what Hopdoddy was doing. The guys that came before me, the founders of the company, some of the most creative, some of the most successful, some of the most intelligent restaurateurs I've ever rubbed elbows with. Every day with them is a treat. And then when I saw the company, I was like, something's in the water down there. And those guys are doing something right. I'd love to be a part of it. And so coming down, everything you said, it's been a dream. It's allowed me to meet amazing people, go do amazing things. And we've grown exponentially since I've been here. So like I came on, we have 15 restaurants. We have 50 now.
How did you learn how to cook initially?
Oh, man.
It is a good story.
It's a podcast in and of itself. Yeah. Over grad school, I didn't know if I wanted to go into like, Galdo or iBanking or something. I had to kind of have like an existential meltdown. I lived in the mountains to be a ski bum and never had a buddy. And where'd you go? Squaw Valley. Nice. I haven't needed a job, and nobody on the mountain was hiring except for the food and beverage department. And I started as a box boy which is essentially like you show up at the base of the mountain in your ski clothes, hit 3 a.m. and a big truck backs it up and it drops 6 pallets on the ground in the snow. And you hand load them onto hand carts and then ride the gondola up and put it away in like the lodges. And that's how I started.
Wow.
And then I kind of parlayed that into like, man, I want to make some more money. Well, you can cook. So I started working the grill and doing that kind of thing and then wanted more. And so that I took my American Culinary Federation exams and practical exams and that kind of thing, parlayed that into a little bit more and then was a chef at the mountain and then kind of moved around all around the country, all around the world cooking.
I mean, you said you came back from a trip and then had like $20,000 to start, your own concept.
Yeah.
Could you unpack that story a little bit?
Yeah, man, I kind of came back from like a little gastronomical tour, doing a bunch of cooking around, a little bit everywhere, and came back, didn't have a lot of money, didn't really know what I was doing. Partnered up with some guys, did a couple different restaurants, kind of a concert, and our first restaurant that it was a craft cocktail bar. It was a really, really high-end tequila, mezcal, cachaça, rum, bacanora, raicilla, mezcal bar. And we serve Pueblo-style Mexican food and kind of Latin American flair, but done with Northwest ingredients. So that's a really fancy way of saying we did like really, really ridiculous tacos.
Yeah.
With really fancy mezcal, and we would play like Biggie in the restaurants.
Yeah.
I had this like mashup juxtaposition of like really, really high-end food, but it was taco with like $12 really, really fancy craft cocktails, but we were playing like, coming in the restaurant. So it was really fun. It was really mellow. And it was like 45 seats. We had no hood. So we were cooking everything on induction burners, like little campfire burners in the back. We had no walk-in. We had a bunch of like double door refrigerators and probably some of the best food I ever cooked in my life.
Damn.
Yeah.
When you were a box boy, was there part of you that was thinking to yourself, what the hell am I doing with my life? And the reason why I'm asking that for the listener is you played football at Boise State, then USD, you got your MBA. So you have an MBA, you have a master's degree in business administration, and you're a box boy at a restaurant at a ski resort. So I'm just curious
Every day I was like, what am I doing? But there was part of me, like you kind of get swept up in it, you end up having a lot of fun. I just had a great time when I was there. I mean, frankly, I was so broke at the time that like just being able to eat for free and have a ski pass was like good enough. It was probably a season into it where I was like, I should try to do something.
Yeah.
The fun thing about being in a ski town is and I'm not knocking on anybody that lives in ski town, but there's not a abundance of ambition in ski towns. But people are there doing what I was doing, which is just kind of ski bumming. So if you have a desire to do more, like you can climb pretty quick.
Yeah.
So like to go from box boy to like chef of the mountain, like, a season and a half, like that's it's less about me and more about like people are just kind of like,
Yeah. And part of the reason why I was asking that question is there's just a lot of men in their 20s that seem like they're really struggling with their passion, that they don't know what their mission is. And it's like you had a MBA and maybe didn't know necessarily what the right path was, but it seems like you just kind of had this natural progression that led you to what you were ultimately supposed to be doing.
Yeah, man, I never cooked.
Yeah.
I wasn't a big like hang out in the kitchen, let me help out. I don't have any of those stories about like, my grandma taught me to make pasta or anything like that. Like my mom's a great cook. She always gives me grief that whenever I talk about like my cooking life growing up, I was like understate what a cook she is. So, Mom, you're a great cook.
Shout out, Mom.
Yeah, shout out, Mom.
But yeah, I mean, it was just, I never grew up doing it. And I always liked, I always like entertaining, I always like doing parties and probably a lot of guys I like parties I can get around. I like making people happy. I really love the creativity of it. I really loved like being able to put a bunch of energy and a bunch of time and a bunch of emotion into like food or drink or experience or like a place in a restaurant and or wherever, and just see people like enjoying that. And that just brought me a lot of joy and a lot of happiness. I think that's what my passion is about.
When did
making people happy?
When did the light bulb go off where you're like, all right, I want to be in the restaurant industry for a long time. Like this is my pursuit.
Honestly, it was probably after my second failed restaurant. And by failed, I mean we were critically very popular. We were just like not popular. So the critical acclaim, popular acclaim, like we were busy every day. We just weren't busy enough. Like it's really hard to make money at a 45 seat restaurant. So like you were talking about just getting by. We ended up not renewing the lease there. And then it was probably after my second restaurant that I ended up closing. I was like, you know what? This actually is what I want to do. Like, I'm going to double down I can't see myself doing anything else.
I was going to ask you, just how hard is it for the listener to actually operate and run a successful restaurant?
It's one of the hardest. I mean, everybody talks about how it's like a really hard industry, and whenever you've read or heard, it's twice as hard. To get it right, it's really hard. When you get something right, it'll take off. But to get it right, and when I say get it right, I mean both from a concept perspective and from a financial perspective. Because you can have a really great concept, but if it's not financially successful, you're not going to have a very good concept for long. So trying to get both of those things to marry can be challenging. Like the four of us right now, like we could sit down and we'd be like, let's think of a really badass restaurant. I promise you we could do it. To make money, to scale it, and to be able to like do that in perpetuity and then stamp it out, repeat it is remarkably challenging.
And Hopdoddy's at 50 restaurants right now. Where are you guys thinking about paying more attention to in terms of growth? Like, is 50 kind of the sweet spot for now, or are you guys trying to like expand beyond that?
We got some things on the horizon.
I love it.
We got some things on the horizon. We just completed a merger or an acquisition. We just bought 15 restaurants that we're converting all Hopdoddy right now. So we're getting another restaurant in Houston on the 20th of this month. We're converting 2 restaurants that we just acquired in Atlanta on Friday and on Tuesday. So we're kind of growing inside of our own footprint. All of our growth aspirations really start in Texas, and then kind of moving in and kind of backfilling in some markets that we're already in. So we have 2 restaurants in Tennessee. I could see us growing that market. I don't see us growing California. We have some restaurants in Florida. We could probably fill in Florida a little bit. We have a few restaurants in Colorado. We could fill that in. We've looked at Arizona. We have a couple restaurants there. We just look for the right markets for us. But right now, it's probably like taking our tier 1 markets and then just backfilling.
Yeah. You had mentioned that the CEO of Hopdoddy's been a huge mentor of yours. Has he always had the vision for just really high quality ingredients, grass-fed patties, just doing things on another level than most conventional burger chains?
So he grew up in the burger business, actually. He had a family company that was about 60 restaurants, and they were also a burger restaurant up in the Pacific Northwest. And he is probably regarded in the nation as everybody knows him. Everybody loves him. He's an amazing guy. He's an even better leader. And he's always kind of had a passion for just doing things a little bit different. And he's always really, really pushed for that and then factor. And we kind of always give him grief about it because he's a guy that, we'll be like, hey, we want to do this. He's like, and we're going to do that here, right? So he's the and then guy. We always joke around with him too. He's thoughtfully unrealistic. So he wants the best food, but at like the same price that we're paying for it. So he always wants to do things that are different, kind of out there. And he did carnivore with Sean for really like 2 years, loved it, felt amazing. And so he also kind of took a little bit of passion into that kind of better for you, better ingredients space as well.
What sort of things do you see in leaders, like particularly in the restaurant space, that makes them more successful or less successful than others?
In the restaurant space, I really think it just comes down to a lot of times leaders are really, really focused on the process. But the best leaders I've worked with typically focus on people, try to get the people right to then drive process. And I think a lot of times people go the opposite way. And in the restaurant industry, I think it's just really important. You have to start with people. You have to understand them. You have to get them to buy in. You have to understand the why. And then it's really easy to get people to follow you.
Has he always given you a lot of just creative autonomy with the menu?
We've worked together in a past life. And since the first moment I met him, he was pretty much like, what do you want to do? And he has always been remarkably supportive. He's been a huge advocate, and he's taken a lot of chances with me. In a past life, we worked together, and you see it everywhere now. We worked together over a decade ago. And, I'm not trying to say we were the first, but we were among the first. Everybody sees the clear ice cubes now. Well, now there's companies that make those big squares for anybody that's listening. If you go to a really fancy cocktail bar, you get an old fashioned, it will come over like a block of ice. It's Klein Bell ice. Well, back a decade ago when we started, I really wanted to do Klein Bell ice, but nobody was making it. Nobody was bandsawing it and putting it in little boxes and sending it to you. So I went to him and I was like, hey, we're going to order sculpture grade ice. And I'm going to take a chainsaw and I'm going to hand cut our ice cubes with a chainsaw on the patio every day. He was like, let's do it. And I mean, so that's just kind of an example of how he's always kind of rolled.
It's so fun to work with people like that because I think when you do hear a lot of no's on a repeated basis from someone who you're working with, it does start to become like a little bit constraining. But when you are at least open-minded to the different ideas that you could have, and like, you never know what could happen with it, right? So it's like always worth kind of like testing them out.
Yeah, we test all kinds of stuff. And we throw a lot of ideas at the wall. I mean, the stuff that we've said no to is insane. But we've thought about a lot of stuff. Yeah, we have some pretty cool aspirations, a bunch of really cool things we're working on. So I'm excited for Hopdoddy guests and followers to see kind of what 2023 has.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys have some huge plans. I'm just curious, when he came to you with the Hopdoddy opportunity maybe 6-7 years ago, what finally convinced you to be like, all right, I'm going to put down my hat as an owner and go work for someone else? Because that is a leap of faith too, especially when you're doing things your way for a long time.
Yeah, huge leap of faith. He actually sent me a menu before he took the job. And he was like, hey, what do you think about this place? I was like, man, I think that's a sweet restaurant. You should definitely take that job. And he came down here and he worked for about a year. And then he called me and he was like, hey, if you ever any interest in coming down and, looking at this concept with me around the culinary team, I'd love to have you. I told him no. I kept doing my own thing. And then he had a culinary guy that was working here, and that guy moved on. And right about that time, I just happened to be calling him, asking him some questions about stuff that I was doing in San Francisco. And he was like, man, telling you the door's still open if you want to come down. I was like, yeah, I'll hop on a plane over and check it out. And when I walked into South Congress the first time, I was like, looking around, I was like, wow. And it really created, it was basically like, I felt like I walked in and I saw so many things that I had always wanted to create in my own restaurants, right? Kind of a laid back vibe. There's some refined food. It was very approachable. The service was really kind of gracious and welcoming. I loved the vibe. And I was like, yeah, I think this is it. So it was really the first time I came down here walking to South Congress.
You mentioned you love Texas too, just in general. But it seemed like so many different types of entrepreneurial pursuits, whether it's the restaurant industry or like fintech or podcasting, they're all kind of happening in Austin. Was there anything else that like drew you into the whole like scene that's happening down here?
Man, I was ready for something different. I lived on the West Coast most of my life. I lived in San Diego, San Francisco, Washington. And I was really ready for something different. So I think the vibe down here kind of really drew me in. I think the people are really great down here. I think the culture is amazing. My wife always makes fun of me for this, but I enjoy that people's pride in Texas. Like people that live here, they take such a sense of pride. I think that if that same kind of like infectious pride in where you're from and where you live was, sprinkled throughout other aspects of life, I think that would be really good for just humanity in general.
Yeah.
I always, when we're driving out to ranches in Hill Country or going out to South Texas or something like that, I just think it's crazy. You drive by so many American flags with like so many Texas flags.
Totally.
Like back in Washington where I'm from, like you'd see a couple of American flags, but we're not going to see like a Washington flag on every single flagpole.
Yeah.
So that really drew me down here. And then when I was here, I just kind of noticed that so many people that I knew had ties down here or were coming down here for something, kind of to your point. And it just kind of seemed like an epicenter of a lot that was going on. And I think that is what's really cool and unique about Austin is there's a little something for everybody. And if it's not exactly in Austin proper, within an hour of outshoot of anywhere, you can find something that's really into.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of thought leaders, industry leaders. There's a lot of stuff going on down here that makes Austin a really special place.
Yeah. One of the things we want to talk to you about was just your perspective on cooking fats and oils, because obviously the seed oil movement has become so much more mainstream. And so I think from a simple perspective, everyone's like, oh, why don't all these restaurants just cook with beef tallow or lard or olive oil or something like that? It's obviously way more complicated from an economics perspective. When you guys think about the future vision, like for you, would you love to be able to say, like, yeah, we'll cook Parmesan truffle fries that everyone loves, being able to cook those in tallow or lard or something?
So I knew this question. I probably should have asked that. I probably should have talked to you guys about that beforehand. I told everybody when I was getting on, I was like, I've never asked. And we start with the caveat that in my house, we cook in beef tallow, duck fat, butter, occasionally coconut oil.
Yeah.
And we use some olive oil or some avocado oil every now and again. I'm obviously, like my wife and I eat probably 23, 24 pounds of meat a week. We haven't bought red meat from the store in a couple of years now because we hunt for most of it. So let me just
100%. Yeah.
on that line.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I like. In the restaurant space, my opinions are kind of twofold. One, we have to make the decisions that are best for business. The oil and kind of fat market is insane. It's the most volatile thing in our entire business. It's the number 3. Like when I stack rank my top 15 items that I buy, beef, buy 4 million pounds of beef a year, potatoes, about a lot of potatoes, buns, and the oils kind of goes back and forth between buns and it kind of goes back and forth between buns and oil. Oil trades on the futures market, and it is insane to try to figure out what your price is going to be. If I could snap my fingers and get a different oil or a better quality oil or anything like that, I probably would. I've looked at beef tallow and I've looked at different kind of cooking oils for the entire time that I've been in Hopdoddy. I just can't afford to basically suck $3 million or $4 million out of our bottom line and go to something like avocado oil and fryers. Number one. Number two, I took 2 of our restaurants and I found a renderer at the time when we had about 12 restaurants. I put beef tallow in the fryers. You guys probably cook with beef tallow, so you guys know, like, at your house, you have beef tallow. It's probably in like a glass jar, sitting next to the stove.
Yeah, totally.
And it's at room temperature. It's solid and it's white. One of the problems is I serve 17 ounces of French fries. They're really thin. And Hopdoddy, one of our trademarks is I would prefer the fry to be so hot. By the time you get it, you actually have to wait because it's so hot to eat. All of that said, when I was testing beef tallow in our fryers, by the time I served them in the stainless steel bowl, by the time it came to the table, some of that fat had cooled and it ended up looking like, congealed white sediment all over the fries, and people didn't necessarily love it. Number one. Number two, believe it or not, I know it's foreign to us in here, but there are people out there that really value the fact that fries are, quote, vegetarian.
Yeah.
Number three, when beef tallow comes in, like we were just talking about, it's in a solid block. So you have to melt that down, and you have to basically turn your fryer on melt mode. You have to melt all that stuff down, get it hot, and then filtering it and cleaning it every day can be a bit of a problem. So it's not something that I'm not interested in.
Yeah.
It's something that it has some challenges.
Yeah.
I've recently heard that apparently Buffalo Wild Wings uses beef tallow.
We've heard that too.
That's some restaurants. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's all of them.
Yeah, I don't either. I've done some research. I couldn't get a conclusive answer for it. It's funny. I actually was just talking to our CEO 5 days ago. I was like, we know enough people. I think we probably know somebody on the board of Buffalo Wild Wings. Like, we need to get hands on this. And doing it, that means it's possible. And that means what I'm about to say is completely false.
Yeah.
But I'm not convinced there's a renderer out there that can supply me, forget about cost, can supply me with enough beef tallow to fill my fryers. So that's a bit of a problem.
Well, do you think there's a world where the educated consumer can create enough demand for that switch to happen? So like they're willing to pay for the premium because they want that type of product?
I do. So I've entertained that idea as well. I've entertained the idea, let's hypothetically say I have 4 fryers. I've entertained the idea of just having one fryer with beef fat and being able to offer like tallow fried potatoes.
Yeah.
And then charge them for it.
Yeah.
This kind of gets back to that first part of the conversation that we're having, which is, my fries are cheap right now. Like if you guys come to South Congress and want to get some fries, it might be $6.95. Like, how many people are going to pay $8 for beef tallow fries? I would hope there's a lot, but if it's you, me, it's you guys, and the guys from Rob Ranch and Sean Baker and Anthony Gustin, that could be a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
The other thing that I will say, and this could be a really great conversation, it could be a really bad conversation. You guys don't follow me on social media personally, do you?
Not yet.
I can't believe you don't. All of 1,100 followers. I have some very passionate, strong feelings about the seed oil movement. And like recently, I probably shouldn't talk about this, but recently someone went into our restaurant and was filming for their social media and was filming after going in and asking people what kind of fry oil they use.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very clear that they were in a Hopdoddy, and we felt a little bit kind of called out by it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a little bit in poor taste, given that I doubt there's a company of our scale that is trying to do what we're doing in the space for, the regenerative movement, this type of
100%
type of beef that we source. We're actually just switching over to regenerative chicken right now. I was on the phone earlier today trying to figure out a way to serve the Iberico bacon that Force of Nature does on a burger. I mean, we serve Vital Foods eggs, we serve Tillamook cheese, we serve chipperback potatoes, we serve longline tuna. I mean, I think our ingredient deck is second to that. We're getting ready to launch probably all regenerative burger. So don't hold me to this, but I'll share the burger with you guys.
It'll be kick-ass.
It's probably going to be a regenerative beef on top of wild boar chorizo mayonnaise with a Vital Farms egg on top of it.
Damn.
The Mafia burger?
Yeah.
Not a bad name. Just putting that out there. So that's kind of one aspect of it. But personally, the seed oil movement moves me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you guys why. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to researching things that I can be emboldened or passionate about. And I probably follow the science a little bit more in regard to seed oil, meaning, do I believe that seed oil is great for you, is like the thing you should be like chasing for optimal human health? Absolutely not. No, I don't. I also know for a fact that there is weak to no scientifically reviewed evidence showing that seed oil is deleterious to human health. I know there's a lot of anecdotal studies. I know there's a lot of mechanistic animal studies. And I know there's a lot of short-term observational studies that have taken place, not in metabolic wards, not systematic reviews, not meta-analyses. And I think some of it can kind of be over-dramatized, in my opinion. And I'm totally fine. Like, you guys are like, dude, I think you're crazy. I'm just saying, I think that most of the human research shows the opposite. Shows that from an inflammation standpoint, I know it sounds crazy, but a lot of times what science would say is when you swap out some of these things, inflammation actually goes down.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go back to the original caveat. I don't personally cook in a lot of seed oil. I don't think you should pursue seed oil, but I also don't think that humans are so sensitive that it's going to like send you in an anaphylactic shock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a hard time buying the fact that if you were to have some seed oil, some food cooked in seed oil a few times a month, I don't think it's going to be that bad for you. And this isn't me towing a company line. This is just me saying, so the reason I asked about my social media is because I was asking said influencer on social media, I was like, can you please show a study in humans where it says seed oil produces X?
Mm-hmm.
And to my knowledge, there's not any. Do you guys follow Lane Norton?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You guys know, so I'm friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've been talking to Lane about this a lot. And Lane's done a lot of the research. Lane's done a lot of the research for me. He's really helped kind of teach me a lot of this stuff. And I think there's kind of weak evidence on it, to be honest with you. All of that to say, I was thinking about some drive over. A lot of the things wrong with seed oils, I agree with from an academic level. Yeah. Any ingredient that you can buy in like 64 ounces and put on your shelf for like 3.5 years and still use it, it's probably not something that I want in my body.
Yeah.
So
well, just so you know, we greatly appreciate the direct and honest answer to the question too. And I do think that pointing a camera in the face of a Hopdoddy restaurant and just being like, oh, F this restaurant because they're using seed oils is like, number one, it's in poor taste. And number two, it's taking away from the fact that a lot of this movement is a progression. And so you're shitting on a restaurant that's doing the right things. You guys, like you just said, you're already sourcing regenerative meat. You're working on a regenerative chicken product. You're working on a regenerative burger. And you guys are already thinking about tallow, but there's all these other aspects to actually operating a commercial kitchen that the average consumer doesn't know. So to just shit on a restaurant because you haven't made the switch over yet doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And I mean, like, listen, not to get off the topic of like seed oils and nutrition, but like, I think I just have more confidence in like how resilient humans can be.
100%.
You know, like not to be disparaging, but like, if you're 65 pounds overweight and you haven't resistance trained in a couple of years, you don't sleep, you have poor relationships, you haven't seen the sun in a while, and you don't drink enough water, probably don't crush French fries at Hopdoddy.
Yeah.
You know, but for like people that are like fit, active, sleep, they hydrate, they resistance train a little bit, they monitor their calories. I mean, I'm not gonna say I don't see the problem. And I know I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth here, saying I don't see the problem with seed oils, but I personally don't test them. I just think that from a benefit standpoint, I think there's more benefit in animal-based fats than there are seed oils.
Totally.
Like I think it's probably cleaner burning source of energy. I think a lot of the serotonin in beef kind of helps mitochondrial energy. I think it's really hard to hide animal fats in food. You know, I think from a caloric standpoint, I can see the aversion to seed oils because, if you avoid seed oils in general, you're eliminating a lot of highly processed food. You know, you don't find a lot of processed food with animal fats in it.
Yeah.
So from a selection standpoint, I 100% agree that seed oil is something that if you're trying to monitor calories, you're trying to lose weight, it's probably something that you want to like shy away from because from a total caloric standpoint, you can take a really healthy meal, lace it with seed oil, and in my opinion, the negative effects of that meal will be because of the additional calories. Now, not necessarily from the seed oil, but not, again, my opinion and all the science that I've read. So I think that where people get in trouble with oils and fats in general is they don't back those calories out of the rest of their meal. It's the same thing with like a sugar sweetened beverage. I don't necessarily think Coca-Cola is a health food, but from a weight loss standpoint, not that weight loss is the only thing, but I think science has showed that losing weight in the first, I can't remember the exact number, but like in the first 15 pounds or something out of relative loss, you start to see, C-reactive protein, HbA1c, you see all these, health markers start to improve just with weight loss. That's kind of why I glom onto weight loss a little bit. If you're less fat, you're probably more healthy in a lot of regards. And so, like the problem I believe with sugar sweetened beverages is if somebody's going to have a really healthy salad and then they drink a Coke with it, it calorically might be okay. The problem that people have is they don't go to Hopdoddy and say, I'll get a burger, hold the cheese, I don't need the fries, or hold the cheese, and then grab a beverage because they're like, that 210 calories from the cheese, I'm going to drink in a soda. They just kind of glom it all together. And there's a lot of hidden calories in there that I think makes people overly fat.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a good transition into some personal nutrition because I think you're an ex-athlete and getting your take on that would be really interesting just as a restaurant owner. So like, how do you think about structuring your meals and what's worked well for you?
Yeah, so I've tried it. Man, I've tried everything. I've tried keto. I tried basically like at one time, crazy as it may sound, I've tried like plant-based keto.
Yeah.
How was that?
I tried like hardcore carnivore. Kind of where I found my sweet spot is kind of staying out of everything's vertical diet, just because of the type of training that I like to do. I like to resistance train. I like to kind of push. I like to sometimes do double day workouts. And for me, I felt great on keto. I felt even better on carnivore. I found that when I really needed to kind of dig down and get a couple extra reps, and as far as absolute strength goes, there was a little something missing there for me. And so just the addition of white rice, sweet potatoes, fruit, that really I think helped my training. It really helped my recovery. I was prepping for a bodybuilding show, and my fat was ridiculously little. And like I had trouble sleeping. I had some cognition issues. a variety of other issues that weren't working.
Yeah.
So where I've kind of landed is, everything gets built around protein. So protein, and then kind of I just try to take a split based on what my goals are at the time between fats and carbs. So I kind of like to be high protein, moderately high carb, low fat. That's kind of how I feel the best. And that's kind of how that's the easiest way for me to eat and be satiated. When I'm pushing performance, when I'm chasing a big squat or a big deadlift or a big row or something like that, I probably ramp up carbs a little bit more. I drop fats, but the way that I do that is if a normal meal for me is ribeye, white rice, and sweet potatoes, I'll probably switch over to some leaner protein, increase the rice, increase the sweet potatoes, so that I have more carbs for some more energy, but keep the protein relatively the same. And then, kind of do the inverse when we go backwards. So sometimes and if it's whole eggs, I'll switch over to egg whites and kind of the same amount of carbs. And that works well for me. That kind of helps that helps me retain some lean mass. It helps me with energy and helps me feel good. I will say, I've said this a few times to people when we're talking about nutrition. I loved the way I felt when I was keto. When I had ketones in my body, I felt like the mental clarity was unreal. I felt like the mental energy was great. I felt like being untethered from food was really, really strong. I think when you're keto, I think it's really easy to intermittent fast. I think the science is kind of, whatever. I think intermittent fasting great for caloric restriction. I think it can kind of help with some other things. But I liked the way I felt when I was doing that. So I would say as I age, I want to go into aging with more muscle mass, because I think muscle mass is the best longevity drug you can possibly take.
Definitely.
And then once I kind of hit that point where, I don't want to push as hard in the gym, but I still want the same amount of energy, I'll probably switch back over to a really, really, really strict keto diet, because I'd like to be untethered from food. I'd like to stay, kind of as sharp as I was on that. I'd be the first to admit that I don't necessarily feel brain fog, but I know how I felt when I was on keto, and I was just very alert, and
It's wild.
It is wild.
Yeah. Feels like a superpower. I love your perspective on nutrition. It sounds like you have an incredible intuitive understanding of what makes your body feel the best. And we hear that a lot with people that go keto, carnivore, even ourselves. It's like you do it, your cognition feels great, your GI symptoms feel amazing, you feel strong, good lifts in the gym, but like when you need that like little bit extra juice when you're like going to max out, or maybe you're going to run really fast or something, it's like you don't quite have that pop. So having some white rice or some sweet potato or something that's like easily digestible, it can make a big difference.
I think that term metabolic flexibility is a really interesting one. I think it gets thrown around a lot. I don't really know how I feel about that, but what I will say is, in regard to being strict keto, and probably my personal biggest problem when I was like carnivore for 2 years, I felt really good. I was trimming up my lifts, and my feeling in the gym was doing okay, but there's just kind of this lingering thing in the back of my head where I was like, if I can't eat half a pint of blueberries without like having this ridiculous insulin spike and just being like flat backed, am I really that healthy?
Yeah,
that's
a good question.
Like, as far as like, just like we're talking like general physical preparedness, or like, the guys that like I train with, not with, we're always joking around, trying to be harder to kill, like somebody like Kingsbury is going to talk about stuff like that.
Right.
Like, man, that's why I think when I approached some of this, and I was like, I want to be fit enough to do whatever it is I want to do. The benefit of being keto or carnivore is like, you can go long stretches of time without eating. But at the same time, like if you can't, and if a large bolus of carbohydrates flatbacks you, I would wonder how healthy you really are. Or at least that's how I felt when I was doing it. So that's my take on it.
You had mentioned that you and Lane are really good friends, and you've learned a lot from him. I personally want to do more research into his work, because he seems like he's doing some unbelievable stuff. He seems like, do the carnivores trigger him, or is it like the dogmatism that maybe upsets him or something like that? Because he does seem like he has a super balanced approach with nutrition, but I see him going back and forth to Saladino and some of these other people. So I'm just curious your take on that.
I think he would self-describe as just anti-bullshit. Yeah, it's funny. His PhD at Lane, I don't want to misquote this, but his PhD was funded by the meat, egg, and dairy industry. He's a meat guy.
Yeah.
He's a protein guy. I just think he's a follow the science guy as well. And so he's really, really in tune with what's going on there, what's out there in the space, who's doing what work. He's wickedly intelligent. I think he just does a really good job of like, a lot of times you'll see media influencers like, in their post, when they're shirtless and they're talking about, this, that, or the other thing, there'll be like some study that flashes up on the screen. And it looks really clickbaity. The other day I saw one. Some guy was talking about how vegetables are bullshit and how they kill you and they're the worst thing in the world. And he flashed a little study up on the screen and I clicked on it. And I started reading through it. And it was saying how brassicas or kale will give you kidney stones and lead to all this bad stuff. And you click on the study, and the study was from one person, a 65-year-old woman with type 2 diabetes that had gastric bypass surgery, and she drank green smoothies for a week and developed kidney stones. And that was the study that they referenced, being like, vegetables are bullshit, they'll kill you. And I was like, that's the kind of thing I think that really like triggers Lane.
Yeah.
Is when people are sources of misinformation, or they distort the data, or they pick kind of like little mechanistic functions and they try to like, cherry pick items from studies and put it together. I think that's what triggers it.
Yeah. It's interesting because nutrition is such a soft science, and a lot of this stuff does come down to the preparation aspect of it. Like if you're, fermenting vegetables or cooking them, like it does help reduce a lot of the anti-nutrients and things like that. So, there's a lot of people out there and probably can't or shouldn't have certain foods in their diet because it triggers like an autoimmune thing. But for like the average person, if they like having vegetables and they prepare them properly, like it's not actually going to kill them,
I think one of the most powerful things about the carnivore diet is it's a ridiculously satiating elimination diet.
It teaches you about food.
It does. It does. I think that it's not for everybody, and it might not be for everybody long term, but I think everybody out there would be well served to take 30 days is physical and mental challenge and just eat red meat and water.
Yeah.
Just see how you feel.
See how you feel.
You might have some stuff clear up that you don't even know is out there. Like nobody walking around right now would be like, man, I have a lot of brain fog. Everybody thinks they feel great. Well, ramp your ketones up to like 3.0. And then tell me how you feel. And then you'll look back and you're like, I had a lot of brain fog. So like, if somebody was like listening to this right now and they're like, maybe I will try it, do it. Like, just rip a bunch of red meat and water for 30 days. And like, you might see some stuff, like you might have always had like red bumps on the back of your arm and those might clear up. Or like, you might have had like a little bit of eczema on the back of your neck, or like you might have had like some GI issues that you never really want to talk about, but were kind of weird. And, or your skin might, something might happen and it might just, there is some magic in meat. I truly, truly, truly do believe that if God was to design a super multivitamin for human consumption, it would be muscle meat, like red muscle meat. And I absolutely believe that. I think there's serious power and magic in meat and what it can do for human health. And I think it should be the foundation and base of most people's diets. I think that all dairy is ridiculously healthy, and eggs are ridiculously healthy. I think, certain cheeses are great. I think red meat is amazing. And I think if that's the foundation of your diet and you focus on that, mix in some resistance training, get enough sleep, drink enough water, I think you're going to be, light years ahead.
Yeah.
Sunlight, like you're good.
Simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing is that, like I kind of felt bad for my guy. I don't know him, but the Liver King, dude's getting blasted. He's getting sued by his followers.
25 mil.
Yeah, he's going to get taken for about maybe. Well, I don't know, but remove the ass full of steroids. The guy's message, I don't necessarily disagree with any of it.
We agree with the message.
I agree with
the 9 essential tenets will work. Yeah, will make you healthier.
Yeah, they're great. And if they don't make you like healthier from like a biomarker standpoint, you're sure going to feel a lot better, dude. I don't think you need to go around chomping on buttholes and testicles to feel great.
Yeah, right.
But like eat some meat, walk a little bit, put your feet on the ground, get some sleep. Don't live next to a telephone pole and don't stick your cell phone next to your balls. And you'll probably, a lot of things are going to work out really good for you.
Yes, your perspective on nutrition is great. And meat really does heal. And the self-experimentation is so important. And, Yeah, it's just interesting because it's a lot simpler than people make it out to be.
That's the thing that I've really learned from him and that's the thing that I think is really polarizing about the nutrition space right now is unfortunately, the stuff that works is not that clickbait.
Mm.
Like, do you know what really, really, really works to get in great shape? Go to the fucking gym every day.
Yeah.
Lift some heavy shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, do you know what really helps you recover? Like cold plunges and saunas and, you know, tart cherry extract and, you know, ashwagandha and, you know, curcumin for inflammation. All that stuff's great too. You know what really, really works? 8 good hours of sleep, you know?
Yeah.
So like the simple stuff is the stuff that nobody wants to talk about because you can't sell products and get followers by it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like going to the gym, eating not like an asshole, and like just living a generally healthy life is really, really easy to do, but you can't sell that program.
Yeah.
So I think that's what really triggers Lane a lot of times. People are like, got to fast 18 hours a day. You can only eat butter in your coffee. And this is the way you have to do it to be healthy. And like you step back sometimes, you're like, hold on, man. You could put a quarter of a stick of butter in your coffee and you're telling me that's optimal health? You know? Like,
Yeah.
and I was guilty as anybody at one time. I literally was had the Vitamix full and was dropping Kerrygold in there, sucking it down and eating for 15 hours. But like step back and be like, they're really, really healthy.
Yeah. There's almost like this anxiety around the biohacking community where it's like every aspect of their life has to be so optimized. There's a supplement for everything. There's particular type of water that you have to drink. You have to get 8-9 hours of sleep, all these different devices. And it's like, I think that's where people like Sean and Stan and all these other people, their message is so good because it's simple. It's eat real foods, drink water, lift heavy shit, live a great life, right? It's
funny because
complicated.
the thing I'll tell you about Sean, and we'll come back to that biohacker thing, is I called him after we were getting flamed about the seed oil thing. I was like, dude, I'm so mad right now. He's like, why do you care? He's like, let's be real, man. If you're going to Hopdoddy and you're a carnivore, you're really trying to eat healthy, you're not eating French fries anyways.
Yeah.
And like the part of the little clip that was out there that I didn't really appreciate is, I think it was dubbed in a way that made it look like if you eat a beef burger at Hopdoddy, we're like slathering the grill with oil. And we're not.
And you're not.
It's not how it goes. Like we're not taking your beef and putting it in a pile of soybean oil. Excuse me. We're just not. And so Sean was the one that was like, dude, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
Like you and me aren't like, he was like, Pat, you and I are going to go to Hopdoddy. We're going to eat 7 beef patties each. You know, like it's not a big deal. I'll tell you about the biohacker industry and kind of that whole movement that really kind of had me in a bad way. I kind of told you about my nutritional journey. And if you listen to all the noise out there and you listen closely enough, you'll be scared to eat anything.
Yeah, totally.
You know, and I think that's the message that I wish I would have heard when I was kind of deep keto, really into carnivore. Because at one time, you know, I'm listening to everything and it's like, oh my God, red meat raises TMAO. It's going to clog your arteries. Can't eat that. But you can't eat butter. But, you know, you're not supposed to eat vegetables. And, oh man, you know, fruits in the, you know, glucose and fructose, you know, spike your insulin up and you're going to be diabetics. You can't eat fruit. You can't eat vegetables. Red meat raises TMAO. My God, egg whites, egg yolks cause cancer. It's like everything out there is apparently bad for you. It's like, well, we're just going to drink water all day?
Yeah.
You know, so like if you listen to everything out there, you can find a sample set of people that are going to tell you everything is bad. And then you look at what you can put on your plate and you're like, you know, nuts have, you know, lectins and, you know, beans are horrible for you. It's like, wow. Okay, so what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. I want to tie that back to your original point, which is like the elimination diet can just help you build that intuition for yourself. Because like everyone's like looking for somebody else to give them the answer on nutrition. And like no one's going to know other than yourself. So you kind of got to like experiment.
Yeah. I mean, some people feel great on things that other people don't, you know, like, you know, my wife was an Olympic level weightlifter who her entire career would just crush carbs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I prefer to not eat that much gluten, not because I think I'm gluten sensitive, but number one, just by not eating gluten, I think it makes me make different choices that are going to help me kind of stay in caloric balance. But I just mentioned to my wife, I was like, why don't you just try kicking gluten for a little while? We just moved in together. And I was like, I guarantee something will happen. And she was like really resistant to it. She tried kicking gluten. You know, come to find out, like she is ridiculously allergic to gluten to the point where like this sounds weird. This is the household we live in, a couple of meatheads. We measured her ankle circumference, and after a week, her ankle had the inflammation in her ankle had gone down like 3 inches.
Damn.
And so we're talking later, and she's like, yeah, I guess, my whole life I kind of always had like a low-level stomach ache after I ate, and I thought that was like normal. I thought everybody kind of felt that way, and like I stopped eating gluten, and like this happens. That's why I think that carnivore diet can be so powerful, because like there's so many things that people don't talk about with their own health, like in an open forum, that they just accept, or they just think it's totally normal, and you don't know it until you don't feel that. Like you don't know, like, man, in the morning, my joints, like if you wake up every day and you go to move your hand and you're like, God, I feel like it's moving through sand. And then you like do something with your diet or something with your workout or something with your hydration. And you wake up and you're like, gosh, all my joints just feel really clear. Right. You didn't know your whole life that you have, a bunch of inflammation or something like that. Yeah. And there's so much power.
Have you learned anything through about nutrition through your whole journey into hunting and kind of sourcing your own food?
The only thing I've learned is that I love everything that we harvest when we hunt. I think that I don't know if I've learned anything novel, but I think it's just probably back to the fact that ruminant animal protein is king. Multi-chamber stomach animals can take things that we cannot eat, and they eat them, digest them, and metabolize them into food that is, remarkably healthy for us.
Yeah.
And on that, I think that it's going to be really cool. I was talking to Sean, I don't want to misquote it, but there is some study going on right now with the difference between grass-fed and grain-fed, and which is more healthy. And I think current science, as I understand it, is there's not a huge health benefit. There might be an environmental benefit. But as far as like human performance, human health, human optimization, grass-fed versus grain-fed, I don't know. There's a big difference right now. I don't know. I don't think that that's very clear. I think there's a lot of opinions based on it about the the fat ratios and type of the whole thing. But I think there's going to be some studies and some science coming out about that.
Yeah, our perspective is to not be dogmatic about that at all. We just want people eating more meat. We would like them to source directly from their local farmer. And I've eaten when I had ulcerative colitis, I ate a ton of grain finished beef, and that's honestly how it built my stomach. I eat a lot of grass finished beef now. I feel amazing, and I think it's kind of up to the individual person to figure out what makes them feel their best.
100%. I think, to your point, we just want more people optimizing your health and eating meat. And if you think grass-fed beef tastes better, have at it, man. And grain-fed, some big Kansas cow with big marbling of fat on the outside, or grain-fed fat tastes better to you, suck it down, brother.
Yeah.
Does it surprise you how many stories you hear about people who are dealing with like all these crazy illnesses or sicknesses, and just to me, it seems like more times than not people are dealing with some sort of autoimmune issue or something like that.
I think it's crazy how many people have undiagnosed or unrealized issues. I think that's the confounding factor out there. I think a lot of people don't know how good they can feel.
Right.
I think a lot of people just kind of accept status quo.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think right now, we live in a time unlike any other. And it is so cool because people are talking about this. I think the fact that there's even debates about like oil versus butter and grass-fed versus grain-fed, and carnivore versus, carb and carb-based. I think that's just, we've never seen such a focus on this. And I just think it's great because hopefully America in our lifetime will not be the fattest country in the world,
Yeah. And we really have normalized disease too, but it's like that. I think that is the cool thing about carnivore. And I'd be curious to get Lane's perspective on, if we ever get him on the show, the balance of like peer-reviewed science, which has such a place, and then also leaning into the power of anecdote too. Because like you had mentioned, you had heard Sean talk about the carnivore diet on Rogan. That inspired you to maybe experiment with that diet. That inspired me to do it too. And I cured a bunch of health issues, and a lot of other people cured health issues because they're like, shit, I'm tired of going to the bathroom 10 times a day, or I have eczema, or I have psoriasis. But I'm seeing these people online that are saying that they're getting better by experimenting with a meat-only diet. So they leaned in on that ability to heal and experimented for 30 days or 2 months or whatever it was. And they were able to actually cure some of these things. So it's like, it's interesting balancing the anecdote with the science too.
I 100% agree. I think that, like my whole thing of sedum, that's right. The science, in my opinion on the science, or on the science that I've seen, is it's not nearly what everybody makes it out to be. Anecdotally, I'm not chasing that stuff.
Yeah.
You go to my house and you're going to find a bunch of Crisco.
Yeah.
So I know that, like, when I eat a bunch of fries, or, have a potato chips, which I don't, but I know what makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll hedge towards that. I don't really care what's in the literature to a certain extent, because I know what makes me feel the best. So that's what I want to fuel my body with.
Yeah. And you bring up the concept of building resilience, which is such an important point. We've been talking about this a lot the last month too. It's like, that's why you're supposed to do these diets, is to build a very resilient body. You're not saying get the Parmesan truffle fries 3 times a day, but the point is, like, you eat carnivore, you do a vertical diet, you do keto, you build this metabolic health. So, like, if you're out with your family and you want to go enjoy a meal at Hopdoddy and have some fries, it's not going to kill you. You can still get back on the path the next day and enjoy a great meal.
Totally. I think that's probably most what Lane, I don't want to make a podcast about what Lane thinks.
Yeah.
I'll call him, since he hang out with it. But there should be freedom in nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't be a slave to a diet, and you shouldn't feel like you have to, diet, and it doesn't need to be community. Diet doesn't need to be a religion. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to only hang out with people that eat the same way as you. And man, when I was carnivore, I will say it was slightly isolating.
Mm-hmm.
But I really bought into it at the time. And I was like, gosh, this is what I need to be doing, and these other people don't understand. And I'm trying to do the best thing for my health. But, like, dude, life's short, man.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't go, like, if everybody's going out and everybody's going to go have an experience, like, I don't want to miss out on experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't drink. It's never really vibed with me. It's never been my thing. But in 2.5 weeks, we're going to be in West Texas, on Naudad, on a 50,000 acre ranch, and there's no TV. There's a little bunkhouse. We'll probably go camp out on a ridge overlooking the Rio Grande. And if I'm sitting by a fire and we just downed a big sheep and we packed it out for 8 hours, and a bunch of people popping some yellow bellies around the fire, I'm not going to be like, sorry, ma'am.
Yeah.
I don't drink.
Yeah.
Just so I can, like, be like, it's not what I do. Like, dude, I want to experience this life.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Like, if I go to France, or if, one of my culinary idols, Rene Redzepi, has Noma in Denmark. My wife and I talked about going back there before they close. I have no clue what's going to be on the menu. There could be some type of crazy fermented sourdough bread or XYZ. I'm just going to eat it.
Yeah.
I just want to eat it.
100%.
And that's why that's why I was crushing myself 20 minutes before I came here. I think that's what life's about. It's about being able to enjoy the things that you want to enjoy, having the experiences that you want to have. And I mean, there was a time where I was a ridiculous slave to food and then my macros. And I just think education brings freedom. And that freedom really can have both the combination of enjoyment and balance with health and all this stuff in life.
100%. Are there any experiences that you're still seeking to have? Noma is one, but any other one?
I would love to go to Noma. I would love to go to Fafking. I'd probably like to go to Massimo Buttaro's restaurant. A lot of these are they're all in these around Chef's Table.
Really?
I wanted to.
So was he the first episode of Chef's Table? I think Massimo was the first episode.
Yeah.
What about Francis Mallman in Patagonia? Do some open fire cooking?
That could be pretty cool.
Yeah.
A lot of the people that I want to go, a lot of the food that I want to go eat is people that I've followed for a really long time, and I really look up to their cooking. There's some key Savoy restaurants I'd like to go to, and I mean, I'm kind of like in my house, man. We're like put the rice cooker on, like brown up some meat. Like that's everybody always gives my wife great grief. They're like, "Oh my God, you live with the chef. What a life!" She's like, "Yeah, what a life."
I eat the same thing every day.
Yeah. She's like, "Oh, browned up hamburger meat and browned up deer and white rice with fried egg." Yeah, it's super glamorous, but like. That's how I eat, but most of the time. But like, man, there's a bunch of stuff that I would love to go try. I'd love to go back to Chris Bianco's pizza restaurant, Pizzeria Bianco in Arizona. He does some amazing stuff. And then, but honestly, dude, some of the best meals I've ever had in my life like a pho restaurant or like a back alley in Houston,
Mm.
you know, like a taco truck behind a gas station over here.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Or like, I've got some of the best food I've ever had in my life is the most simple food I've ever had in my life, just prepared like in a way that I've never seen done before.
Share with great people too, right? Those shared experiences.
100%.
Yeah. But Matt, you said it all, man. It's so awesome having you in studio. Love your perspective, everything you guys are doing in Hopdoddy. You have an amazing mindset around nutrition, and we've learned a ton from this conversation. So thank you so much for coming to the studio and doing this, brother.
Thank you guys for having me. Great time.
Appreciate it.
Cool.